Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast with your hosts, Adam Emmert.
This isn't a Hallmark movie. Sally Fields doesn't star in this film. This is Left Tackle.
And Brandan Schultz.
In an incredible point swing, Valchika came back after Drew Brees and Odell Beckham combined for 72 fantasy points.
Go Hawks!
This is the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandan Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you, Brandan. Or should I call it Happy Unsubstantiated Marshawn Lynch is coming out of retirement rumor day, because it is an annual event. This is something we do every year.
It's an annual event, and it's post Richard Sherman unsubstantiated rumor trade day. So they're back-to-back days this year.
Dude, I gotta tell you, this might have been the most annoying week in the NFL ever for me.
For you.
Yeah,
judging by your reactions, there's multiple things that have really kind of dug under your skin, under your fingernails. It's been a rough week for you as a Seahawks fan.
Yeah,
and we're gonna have to talk about this, but lots and lots of news, as you mentioned. Eddie Lacy signs as a free agent with the Seahawks. They also re-signed tight end Luke Wilson. Deshaun Shedd is coming back to the team, which I know that one makes you happy, Adam, because you've been talking about that one.
Yeah.
You've been talking about that one. And then, of course, all the rumors and much more to talk about this week on the show. We have Wayne Henderson of the Packers Fan Podcast coming on to talk a little bit of Eddie Lacy. And, of course, we have our Do Better and Better at Life. It's a big show.
Lots to cover today. Things continue to go down here on this Friday. It seems to be a busy day in the league. So hopefully no big news comes out here for the rest of the day. Although I do have a theory on a trade that's about to go down. I mean, because since podcasters can now just throw out star players getting traded, and that's now news, I've got one of my own.
Adam is going to break some news. Bleacher Report, you are on the clock to write a story about Adam's potential trade scenario.
Yeah,
so if you write for Bleacher Report, you're going to want to tune in, stick around, and hear what Adam has to say coming up.
Yeah, big time stuff here.
All right. Well, Pi Day was this week, Adam, and appropriately, the Seahawks signed a guy who is notorious for having weight issues at running back, Eddie Lacy, to the team. And Adam, judging by your reactions, I know you're against this, but to me, this made nothing but sense after the Seahawks fell through, after the TJ Lang deal fell through earlier this week.
Yeah, this is look, get out the catfish button. This is dumb as shit.
Catfish!
This is a stupid signing. I don't understand it for the life of me. I really don't get it. I wasn't really all that interested in any of these veteran running backs that we are bringing in, but I was easily least interested in an underachieving Eddie Lacy. I don't get it for the life of me. Look, the one part of it is that the Seahawks want to return to being the power run team that we all would like them to be. And that I understand. That part I get and I'm on board with. But you're putting the cart before the horse. If you have no line to run behind, you will not run anywhere. And on top of that, you already have 4 backs on the roster that can fill in and produce. And you're going to be risking injury with those guys as much as you're going to be risking injury with Eddie Lacy. I don't understand it. It's a waste of money. This is $3 million against the cap that we could have used to sign another offensive lineman. And it's not so much that I'm against Eddie Lacy. It's more the idea that this limits us in actually addressing the big needs on the team. This was a waste of money.
Well, you said put the cart before the horse, and that's why I point back to the TJ Lang deal. When they missed out on TJ Lang, there were no more offensive linemen to sign that were really going to improve this team significantly.
That is not true.
Significantly, Adam.
I'm going to give you a list here. You want a list of guys who are available right now today that would improve this team significantly?
There's nobody that you're going to name that's going to be significant to me.
I've got 1, 2, 3
that they
4,
can't still sign.
5, 6, 7 that they absolutely could sign right now today. They are available right now.
They're available right now, and they could sign them. So what?
We don't have the money now. The money's gone.
Oh, they have money.
No, the money's gone. Here's the nuts and bolts of it, Brandan. You signed. You had about anywhere from $27 to $33 million in cap space coming into the season. You have to save X amount of that for injured players, practice squad guys, your draftees, things like that. And what that leaves you is estimated by any of the experts is somewhere between $10 and $15 million in cap space. Luke Joeckel will cost you $7 million because it's a 1-year deal. $7 million is guaranteed. It's $7 million against the cap. Eddie Lacy's is $3.2 million. That is guaranteed against the cap on his 1-year deal. That's $10 million total. Then you sign Nico Thorpe. That's another $2 million against the cap. Then you go out and you sign Luke Wilson today, and I believe that's another 1-year deal. That's $3 million against the cap. So now you're at $15 million right there. And then they just went out and signed Deshaun Shedd too to a 1-year deal. I haven't seen the number on that. So right now we're already over what people seem to think is our actual cap number without getting rid of other guys. There's no more money. The money's gone. It's been spent. It's over. And we wasted $3 million on a running back who can't stay off the cheeseburgers when we already have 4 backs on the roster that can play.
There's more than one way to improve your offensive line, right? You saw when the Seahawks had Marshawn Lynch, it made a difference having a running back that could break tackles. And Eddie Lacy is a guy who can break tackles. In the past 4 years, he's the number 2 guy at breaking tackles and getting extra yards. And you say that he's an underachiever, Adam. Looking back at his numbers, 2013, almost 1,200 yards. You look at yards from scrimmage, he's over 1,500 or almost 1,500. He was over 1,500 yards from scrimmage in year 2. Year 3, that's when you started to see him run into the weight issues, I guess, toward the end of the season. Mike McCarthy called him out on it. He had an outstanding offseason last year. He came back into camp in shape last year before getting hurt. He was having one of his most productive years, over 5 yards per carry with Green Bay. And I know you don't like the Marshawn Lynch comparison.
No.
They're different guys. But
yeah, they're not even close
in terms of where they were at in their career. You look at the stat sheets, the first 4 years of Green Bay versus Marshawn Lynch, first 4 years in Buffalo. It's really similar in terms of yards per carry, in terms of the amount of yards, in terms of the number of carries. It's very similar. That there's no reason to believe that Eddie Lacy cannot bounce back from this injury and get back to those productive seasons that he saw earlier in his career.
Yes, there are. And I'll give you 5 of them. They're called the starting offensive linemen. When you look at the most productive years that Eddie Lacy was in the league, his first 2, and again, his yardage has declined every single year that he's been in the league. He's a player in regression.
That's so you could say the same thing about Marshawn Lynch after his first 4 years. When you look at
his 2 years that he was his most productive, where he went over 1,000 yards, he was playing behind an offensive line that had 2 to 3 either Pro Bowlers at the time or future Pro Bowlers. He had David Bakhtiari. He had TJ Lane, the guy we just threw the pocketbook at. He had Josh Sitton, a guy who was in the Pro Bowl last year for the Chicago Bears. But he had 5 linemen that were either high-quality starting offensive linemen or Pro Bowlers. And that's when he had productive seasons. When you start seeing the Packers lose an offensive lineman here or there, his production starts to go down. And his weight goes up, and his injuries go up. Look, if you want to say Eddie Lacy's had all this production in his 4 years and it's comparable to Marshawn Lynch, that's fine. But when you were building the team, when you brought on Marshawn Lynch, you were rebuilding the team from scratch. He was going to be a centerpiece of your offense, and you had the money to put forward for that. We're not in that position right now. We're in a position right now to where the team is already built. The foundation is already there. You need complementary players that you can actually afford. So you talked about Eddie Lacy having so much production over his 4 years. There's another back that's had within 1,000 yards rushing of him and within 40 yards receiving of him over the last 4 years, and he hasn't even been a full-time starter. He's been a backup primarily the last 4 years, and he cost the Pittsburgh Steelers $2 million last year, and in the market for running backs this year, that's even more depressed. I'm sure you could got him for maybe $1 million, $1.5 million bucks against the cap. That's half the money. His name is D'Angelo Williams, and that's a guy who plays who actually runs harder than Eddie Lacy, and somebody I know that I can count on to actually be not injured and to be in shape. I can actually count on that.
D'Angelo Williams is 33 years old. He's older than Adrian Peterson.
I don't care. Here's the thing. This is something that's driving me nuts about the Seahawks right now. They have ageism. They really do. I understand you want to stay young and have a young core and all that, and that's great. But look at how the Patriots do things. They have their young core, and then they go out and when, say, Willie McGinnis retires, they go out and they bring in an older Junior Seau and have success. They go out and they find older veterans that can still perform for a year or two that you get at a discounted rate because of their age, that you fit under the cap, and then you stay competitive, and you're always churning over that part of the roster. And we're not doing that right now. We're banking on these guys like Joeckel, who, fantastic, he's young, but he's been an underachiever. Eddie Lacy, still young, great, but he's an underachiever. Give me a guy that I can get for half the cost and know that he's going to perform and still have money to go out and sign 2 to 3 offensive linemen. Would you rather have Luke Joeckel and Eddie Lacy, or Luke Joeckel, maybe King Dunlap, maybe Jake Long, and D'Angelo Williams?
I would rather have Eddie Lacy and replace Luke Joeckel with a couple of those offensive lineman names, because
you could have Luke Joeckel and those offensive linemen and D'Angelo Williams, or you can have Luke Joeckel and Eddie Lacy. That's how it works on the money under the cap.
If we're coming up with fake scenarios of things that I would rather have, it would rather be Eddie Lacy and replacing Luke Joeckel's money with other offensive linemen. Paying $7 million to Luke Joeckel, to me, seems like more of the mistake than giving $3 million to Eddie Lacy. I think we're going to look down at the end of the road and see the market for a guy who couldn't succeed in Jacksonville, and we're going to trust that he can come to Seattle.
We're not going to trust. You're rolling the dice.
Yeah, I know you're rolling the dice. So right. I'm saying get a couple veteran guys for what you paid Luke Joeckel, and I think Eddie Lacy has a lot more chance to succeed in Seattle than Joeckel does.
He has zero chance with this offensive line. I'm with you. Like, rolling the dice on Joeckel makes me nervous, but that's where we're at after making poor decisions now for the second year in a row in the offseason when it comes to the offensive line. This is where we're at. We're at rolling the dice time. And one of the things that annoys me the most about this Eddie Lacy signing is the idea that you couldn't bring in Luke Joeckel and then also bring in, say, Austin Pastor from the Cleveland Browns or Tim Lolito. Like, these are guys that can actually play. To give you an idea of how I know these guys can actually play, your starting left tackle, George Fant, rated on Pro Football Focus as a 27.6. An average player is a 70. Okay? These guys both were rated over 70 via Pro Football Focus. King Dunlap was at least a 60. Jake Long was 63.9. Those are both left tackle. These are guys you can come in and have play and take to maybe even put at right tackle. So I don't understand why the Seahawks organization, when they first came in, decided with Pete Carroll and John Schneider that they were going to churn the roster over, create giant competition, and find guys that could play. And now we sit here with this offensive line and we bring in maybe a guy, maybe 2 at a time to compete, and then kick the good ones off the team when the preseason's over, instead of churning over this roster when it comes to offensive linemen until we find our starting 5. And they're not doing it. Bringing in Luke Joeckel is not enough. And so I would much rather not sign Fat Eddie and bring in Luke Joeckel and bring in maybe King Dunlap or Breno Giacomini or Ryan Clady along with Luke Joeckel, because you could afford it at that point.
I think we agree on a similar thing, and that the offensive line needs help, Adam. I don't agree that Joeckel is the guy to do it for them. That was the thing that blew me away in the last show. I went into that show not knowing what Luke Joeckel had signed for. And when you drop that $7 million guaranteed bomb on me, $7 million for a guy that we're not even sure that can play, when there's all those names that you listed that have proven that they can play, and by objective scouting eyeballs say that those guys can play, we're taking a chance, a $7 million gamble on a guy that we're not sure if he can still play left tackle. In fact, the Jaguars thought that he couldn't play left tackle, so they went out and got a guy from Pittsburgh, moved Joeckel into guard, and that's where they left him before he got injured. I would rather have a guy who I know still has the passion and fire that Eddie Lacy does last year to put in the work that he did.
But he doesn't play offensive line.
To put in the work that it doesn't matter. You had
it does
Marshawn
matter.
Lynch.
That's the entire point.
Marshawn Lynch made your offensive line better by being
Look at
the
Marshawn
type
Lynch's
of guy.
last year behind a bad offensive line and tell me that he was able to make it better.
The line isn't going to be as bad as it was last year. Those guys are going to improve a little bit based on last year.
Wow.
It's going to get better. It's going to get a little bit better.
Dude, in everything is puppies and rainbows, man.
We've talked about how guys have down years, guys have good years. Justin Britt last year had a very good year. Gary Gilliam had a down year based on the year before. You have potential for him to get better. Fetty is a rookie going through his rookie season last year. He started off last season injured. Fetty can be better. And how do you not think that guys can improve from year to year?
This is exactly why I don't think that's going to happen, because going into the season last year, Gary Gilliam was coming off a pretty decent year at right tackle, and he's now going to be our starting left tackle because he can get it done. He's a good athlete, and he's on the upswing. And then we draft Jermaine Fetty, who's going to be, a great stalwart at right tackle. Guard. And then we're going to bring in Jamarcus Webb, who had a great year the year before with the Oakland Raiders, but just sucked at the rest of his freaking career, and put him out there at right tackle and make him the highest paid offensive lineman that we have, and then not play him. So, this whole narrative that I get spewed on by freaking John Schneider and Pete Carroll and Tom Cable about these internal guys, they're going to make our offensive line better. I don't buy it anymore. I've heard it year in and year out.
Down, Adam.
No, it's just a matter of results. It's a matter of results and looking at the facts and be like, it doesn't make me happy to come on the podcast and rip the team.
How is this team any different from the team you said this team is going to the Super Bowl at the beginning of last season?
Because I bought that hogwash last year. I drank the Kool-Aid that this offensive line was going to be okay. And I'm looking at the strategy to take care of it this year, and the strategy is sign one dude on the offensive line. That's it. That's all. And then bring in an underachieving running back that a lot of people like to call Beast Mode 2.0. It reeks of desperation. And I hate it. I hate this move. What I'd love? I'd love at the end of this upcoming season, to eat all the crow about this. I would love to be wrong. I don't think I am. And it's just, and the other part of it is, you could get D'Angelo Williams to do the same thing, or you can go out and you can draft a guy to do the same thing as Eddie Lacy.
Okay,
there's lots of dudes.
We can get to that, Adam. We can talk about the draft, but you know what? I think we need to go straight to our trustworthy source of Packers news, the Packers Fan Podcast. And joining us on the show is Wayne Henderson, co-host of the Packers Fan Podcast. Welcome to the show, Wayne.
Adam, Brandan, thanks so much for having me on. Is it football season yet?
It's not close enough, Wayne. I mean, we're coming up on the draft, which thank goodness, but the beginning of the season cannot get here soon enough, and neither can our rematch with the Packers in Lambeau Field in 2017. I've talked about this on the show, Wayne. I think there is a curse of Mike Holmgren. He got his first win when he went back to Lambeau, but since then the Seahawks have not won in Lambeau. I think there's a curse of some sort.
I think it's because you guys, even though you're on the West Coast, obviously, you should be part of our division, because I think the Seahawks truly are our biggest rival. Bears, Lions, Vikings. The Seahawks are the ones that we really gear up for.
Well, we've tried taking at least two of your players, and maybe even almost three players this offseason. We had Jared Cook in for a visit. We had TJ Lang in for a visit, but we got Eddie Lacy. And from your perspective, Wayne, watching Eddie Lacy over the past 4 years, what kind of player are the Seahawks getting with Lacy?
Man, it is hard to say. With Lacy, it's feast or famine. And that's not a joke with everybody talking about his weight issues. But, he's had some injuries that have caused him setbacks and other things. But when he is on and when he is in his zone, he's a beast. I mean, you had beast mode, the original beast mode. But Eddie Lacy, man, I know that I would not want to be out on that field trying to tackle that guy coming at me. So as long as he stays injury free, I know he had a bit of an ankle issue and other stuff. I just think you guys got to steal. He's one player that I really wish we could have found a way to hang on to him and possibly have this upcoming season be his magical season. But now he's yours.
There's two things about Eddie Lacy that really kind of stand out to me and have me worried. One is that his production went down every single year he was in Green Bay. And then the second, with that too, he also ran behind an offensive line full of Pro Bowlers. I mean, we're talking Josh Sitton, we're talking TJ Lane, we're talking Bakhtiari. I mean, you guys, his best season, I mean, you guys had a really great offensive line. And a lot of the highlights that I see of him, it's, busting through a hole that you could drive a Cadillac through. And then, of course, he gets 2.6 yards after contact after that because he's got 400 pounds rolling down the field. And the second thing that I really worry about with Eddie Lacy is not the weight, it's the motivation. And it just feels like this is a guy that's either his head's in it or it's not. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It always seemed like he was always in McCarthy's doghouse, like continually.
I think from the outside, I could see where that's a valid concern. To me, I never picked up on that side of it other than the end of the season before last, where it really looked like he was getting heavy and having troubles. But I don't think he was necessarily in McCarthy's doghouse. I just think maybe he just seems aloof. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised having Eddie Lacy on the Seahawks now. And maybe the change of scenery and getting out of the cold, freezing weather that obviously comes to Green Bay every November, maybe being in Seattle, the rain, the greenery, the ocean not far from there. Maybe this is just what he needs, and it'll be, a win-win.
So what is your assessment?
When you play the Packers.
What is your assessment of Eddie when he's running into like a cluttered line where he doesn't have that big hole, the clear lane to go? I mean, how did that feel to you in his time there in Green Bay?
To me, I think it worked well at least half the time. Sometimes he would be surprisingly stopped, and I wondered how on earth that could happen. But other times he would bring out that patented spin move and create a hole and, go from there. Once he gets the full steam going, look out. But I think he does pretty well with that spin move. That was one of my favorite things when he was playing with the Packers. And it was just too bad that between injuries and other things that we never got to see his full potential. And it will hurt me if you guys get his full potential all season this year.
It's interesting that you bring up the spin move, Wayne, because we sent another guy your direction, Christine Michael, who we saw a spin move from almost just you were bound to see it. We called him the human dreidel. At least one of our listeners pegged him with that nickname. Is Eddie Lacy's spin move better in the sense that he uses it appropriately, or did you even notice? Was Christine Michael even in the game enough for the Packers for you to pick up on that?
Although I didn't see Christine Michael get to play with the Packers as much as I had hoped, but I think their spin moves are totally different. I mean, Eddie Lacy maybe more of a corkscrew, and Christine Michaels was more of a blender. I mean, Eddie Lacy would just spin and just go straight through people, but Christine Michael, I saw some of the highlights of some of his spin moves, and it just made him very elusive and hard to tackle. And I was hoping for great things from him last year. I thought we got quite a steal because, as you know, we've had a lot of running back and running game problems off and on for the past few years. We're just waiting for something to click.
Yeah, well, that's the story with Christine Michael, no doubt about it. Fun fact for you guys, though. Eddie Lacy and Christine Michael were picked back-to-back in the draft.
That is a fun fact.
Really?
Eddie Lacy and then Christine Michael back-to-back in the second round.
Yeah, a lot of people thinking that maybe the Seahawks would have taken Eddie Lacy had the Packers not pulled him off the board the pick right before.
So basically, we both have our underachieving running backs of the past.
I don't know if you could say Eddie Lacy is underachieving because I want to go back to that.
His last 2 years, he's underachieved.
The last 2 years, but 1 year he was injured. Now you mentioned his production going down.
Injury is a part of talent, man.
It's staying healthy is a part of it. Just like we have another guy who hasn't been able to stay healthy after Marshawn Lynch left, and I feel like these two runners are of similar style. And
Marshawn Lynch and Eddie Lacy,
all three of them. Marshawn Lynch, Thomas Rawls, Eddie Lacy, with
I'll forever disagree with you on this, man. There's a difference between big and people who run tough. People honestly confuse those two things very often. Eddie Lacy always has been to me not just a poor man's Jerome Bettis, but an eternally destituted Jerome Bettis. Like he's just
oh my.
He's just a big dude. That I've never once as a Seahawks fan watched Eddie Lacy in a game and been like, I'm afraid of that guy. Never once.
Really?
Never once. I always felt he was easily containable. He just never scared me.
Interesting. I thought for sure he was striking fear in the hearts of opposing teams.
See, I'm with you, Wayne. Not only is Adam wrong on this, he's wrong.
Whoa, there's no way I'm wrong on this. It's just in 2 years we're gonna roll back the tape on this one, man. It's gonna be interesting. I've always seen Eddie Lacy as an average runner, man. I really have.
Wayne, do you see him more in the style of Jerome Bettis or a poor man's Jerome Bettis, as Adam put it? Or do you see
eternally destitute Jerome Bettis?
I couldn't remember all the words, Adam. Or do you see him more in the style of Marshawn Lynch, one cut and really looking to bowl guys over at the end of the run?
I mean, to be frank, and running backs aren't necessarily an area where I have the expertise, but to me, I did think he was a lot like Marshawn Lynch. Except for, not with the whole baggage of the candies and his mom coming out. I don't know what Marshawn Lynch's deal was with the media, but Eddie Lacy, in that respect, I don't think you have to worry with problems with the media.
Well, he seems like a chill, laid-back dude. I really like Eddie Lacy's personality, and so I
like the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're going to like the runner too, Adam.
No, because here's the problem, Brandon. You got to have a line to run behind. See, it doesn't make any sense to put the cart before the horse, and that's what we just did.
All right, Wayne. Well, I really want to thank you for coming on the show to help give us a little bit of perspective of Packers fans with regard to Eddie Lacy. And Wayne, we're going to be looking for you again when the Seahawks go back to Lambeau Field this coming 2017.
That is going to be amazing. I appreciate you guys having me on this week. I cannot wait for not only the draft, the schedule release. Heck, I'm even at this point geeked up to find out the exact dates and times of some of the preseason games.
Oh, I know.
It's a sickness. It's a sickness, isn't it, Wayne?
Yes.
My sickness is at an all-time level, Wayne. I was just watching 2014 Jacksonville Jaguars offensive games just to watch Luke Joeckel play tackle. Like awesome. That's what I've done the last 2 nights. The sickness is real, man. I feel your pain.
NFL rocks.
Thanks again, Wayne.
All right. Thanks, guys.
So Wayne Henderson, I think his conclusion there was he thinks that we're going to like Eddie Lacy. The interesting thing is I talked to our buddy Troy Heinrichs, who's come on the show before, and I get the sense from him that he's more in your camp, Adam. So as divided as we might be as Seahawks fans, I think the Packers fans may be equally divided on this as well, because Troy was kind of a little bit turned off by weight issues and injury issues with Lacy. Mm-hmm. I think that, and I probably, had this happened last season, I might be in the same boat as you, because toward the end of the season, when his production was declining and he was starting to pick up the weight, it did seem when he kind of went into McCarthy's doghouse about having the weight issues that he just wasn't motivated enough for football. But he went into that offseason and he started working with the P90X dude, Tony Horton. He lived at his house for 2 months. To learn the kind of that lifestyle that Tony Horton lives. And if you're not familiar with this guy, the P90X guy, I've heard interviews with him, and his big splurge in terms of food is having a slice of vegan cheesecake. That's his big his cheat, what he might have on a cheat day. And
I don't think he's eating China food anytime soon.
No. But Lacy, he made that effort, made that transition.
Yes. Absolutely.
And he came into camp last year. That, to me,
I get
showing that kind of motivation, it intrigues me, and I really like the personality that I see from Eddie Lacy. To me, the reports that he was 267 at one of the weigh-ins when they showed his video on Seahawks.com, I didn't see that much. He didn't look intensely overweight.
I'm glad you brought that up, because out of everything that I've been saying, that was one thing I wanted to talk about. If that's 267, he looks pretty good at 267.
Yeah.
All fat jokes aside and all that, because it's the low hanging fruit and all that. Like that's not even my biggest problem. That's not my biggest problem with Eddie Lacy is the weight part. That is not at all. And it's really not even the player himself for the most part. I just think that we have more talented guys on the roster already. There's equally as talented guys you could bring in from the draft. And I don't care. It's much like the argument with Jimmy Graham and having him on the team. Fantastic. You have Jimmy Graham and he's a great weapon. But if the offensive line can't protect Russell Wilson long enough for him to get him the ball, then it makes no difference. Yeah. Then he's ineffective. Mm-hmm. Everything is. That's why I'm such a big fan of building from the inside out. And it's not that I don't like Eddie Lacy. It's that he doesn't play offensive line. And that's really what at the end of the day, what the biggest problem for me is here. Because now that you go out and sign Nico Thorpe and you sign Deshaun Shedd, which we needed to do because we're thin at corner, and you go out and I don't know why in the world you'd sign freaking Luke Wilson for $3 million. Jesus, there's $6 million in cap space between Lacy and Wilson that you could have gone out and gotten 2 other offensive linemen. You really could have. In a draft coming up that's full of running backs and full of tight ends and not full of offensive linemen. And that's the reason I'm freaking out about this free agency thing right now, is there's not a lot of answers in the draft. Now, if they actually go out and spend draft capital on an offensive lineman and find a good one, great. But to quote Hawkblogger, the idea that you're going to go out and draft an offensive lineman in this draft, you get a so-so offensive lineman in the first round when you can have a franchise type player at a different position that you could draft in the first round, because there's a lot of great corners, a lot of great running backs, a lot of great tight ends. You've put yourself in such a bad position from these last 2 years that this is what you're doing now. You draft almost entirely off a need at that point. So I would have much rather signed a bunch more offensive linemen in free agency, filled tight end, filled running back, filled corner in safety in the draft. Like that's what I would have liked to have done that. Complementary pieces.
With all this focus on the offense, to me, it does say that this is going to be a defensive heavy draft for the Seahawks, because now they may not worry about running back necessarily until maybe the late rounds. And yet you say there's a lot of great running backs. I think there's a lot of average running backs in the draft. There's a
you don't know how to evaluate running backs.
There's a couple great ones, but there's just a lot of dudes that are like run 4.5 40s and are 200 pounds and fit within the profile.
Because I care what their 40 time is.
Just saying.
Le'Veon Bell ran a 4.6 40. I went through and I watched about 10 different running backs last night. Watched some of their highlights, some of their complete games, some of those situations. And you're right. There's some dudes that are just average, no doubt. But there's some guys that are projected to go, 3rd, 4th, 5th round that are damn good. And one of them to me is Samaje Perine from Oklahoma. That dude runs like a beast.
It's interesting that you say that, because I watched the YouTube highlights, his quote unquote tape. And
I watched that one and a bunch of others, but yeah.
The same complaint that you brought up with Eddie Lacy and the Packers, I see the same thing with Perine. I watched that video and I think, look at those holes that the Oklahoma offensive line's opening up.
Apparently we watched different videos, even though I sent you the link, because one of the things that I specifically watched for was to see if there were any runs in there with a cluttered line that he made it go. And sure, it's a highlight tape. Yeah. You're gonna see a lot of runs that threw open holes, no doubt. But there were also a number of runs in there that running through a cluttered line at the goal line. There was a bunch that were out of the Wildcat where he made the hole and scored a touchdown. Like there's a lot of that. And maybe that was on one of the other highlights that and I also watched a couple games where they had every play that he played during a game. This guy actually can play. And it's somebody you could get in the 4th to 6th round. And then you have the 4 guys that are on the roster right now besides Eddie Lacy, and with Rawls, Procise, Collins, and Pope. I like that foursome. And add me one dude from the draft, I feel pretty good about it. I feel way better about those 4 dudes than I feel about the guys who play up front.
Going into this offseason, you could tell, based on what the Seahawks were doing in free agency, they were going,
which is the wrong thing.
Their goal to improve the run game, whether it was trying to sign TJ Lang, which I really wish that I would feel so much better about these last 2 weeks.
You and me
had
both.
They signed Lang and Lacy. And
that wouldn't have happened though. You signed TJ Lang and Joeckel, and there's no Eddie Lacy at that point.
You're making me
Jokel's
want
already
Joeckel.
signed. Jokel's already signed. It's already done.
Lacy's already signed.
Well, now he is.
I know.
This happened between the last podcast. So what I don't understand is how the Seahawks didn't make an offer for Mike Remmers or Kelvin Beachum or Steven Wisniewski or...
They didn't even visit.
Well, yeah, you got to give him a call and ask him to catfish. Come.
How do you know that didn't happen?
I don't know that, but none of it happened.
They visited other places and they didn't leave.
All I know is this,
contract.
Brandon. All I know is this, is that there are at least 10 dudes between guys who've already signed and guys that are still available right now. And you couldn't get all but one to come in? Only 10% of them would come in for a visit? That seems unlikely to me. Players love doing the free agency tour. It's a free trip.
The thing is, a lot of these guys, it seemed like there were deals in place when free agency kicked off. When was there even time to do visits? Did Joeckel even do a visit, or did they just announce the signing?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys right now that are still available today. King Dunlap, Breno Giacomini, Ryan Clady, Gosler Cherilus, Jake Long, Tim Lolito, Bushrod signed yesterday, Jari Evans, Chris Chester, and Austin Pazdur. Those are all guys that are available right now. They don't have deals in place. They could be walking through the door tomorrow if you had the cap space. But now it's gone.
Well, make the cap space, Adam. You make the cap space. You trade Jimmy Graham to somebody. There's $10 million. You can go sign 2 or 3 of those guys.
I'm glad you brought that up because now it's time for the unsubstantiated trade rumor.
Okay.
Basically, they re-signed Luke Wilson to a group that already is one of our strongest groups on the team in tight end with Jimmy Graham and Nick Vernett. And then the idea that there are other tight ends in this draft and, maybe a cheap free agent here or there that you could bring in on $1 million or so, whatever.
Okay.
Basically, from my estimation, and again, I'm no cap expert, but we're either right at the limit or a little over the limit, considering that you got draft players coming in and all that.
Right. So they won't count toward the cap until you draft them.
Exactly. So that means they're going to have to make some space somewhere, and maybe they're not done with this offensive line. Only bringing in Luke Joeckel doesn't seem like a good plan. That doesn't seem like a realistic plan. So with the signing of Luke Wilson, that made me think a little bit of the idea that they're looking to trade Jimmy Graham. This smokescreen of Richard Sherman's up on the trade block, blah, 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 is just that. It's a smokescreen to cover the real news, which is I think the Seahawks are really thinking about trading Jimmy Graham at this point for an offensive lineman and a draft pick, probably.
Adam. You're saying it all wrong. For this to be an actual story, you're not using your correct phrasing. You're supposed to say, I believe, based on everything that I'm seeing from the team, that trading Jimmy Graham for the right price is absolutely something the Seahawks would be willing to do.
Isn't that what I just said?
You didn't put it quite as concisely. I've read these reports, and that's exactly how the quote goes. If you want to get in the news, you have to phrase it that way.
I'm not going to put it in a Twitter soundbite. Like the right price is a real offensive lineman. I said it just like you. You know what I think about my story, though, Brandon? Is this right here.
Cool story, bro.
That's how I feel about it.
Well, according to Spot Track right now, the Seahawks are $13 million under the cap. And right. So once you consider, the draft pool, well, no, this is with $5 million for the draft pool already in there.
Yeah, between the draft pool and injured players and practice squad guys and all of the ringamarang, from what I've read from guys who seem to know about this, is that all equals about $10 million usually.
Okay. Well, see,
that's about
you got $1 million for Breno still, or 1.5 maybe.
Great, then let's do it. Let's quit catfish around. Like, just do it. Like, bring in some competition. Let's go.
And you have to re-sign Cam Chancellor, and so make that happen.
Okay, so that was the other thing, is this Eddie Lacy thing. again, that's $3 million that could go towards re-upping Cam, re-upping Jimmy.
Not gonna,
if
we
those
talked
things
about
are
this
priorities.
before. Re-upping Cam is not going to. He's going to get the same amount of money this year if you re-sign him. That's what they do every time.
Right. But so here's the thing, though, is if you re-up Jimmy or you re-up Cam, what it allows you to do is spread the cap hit out.
Right. Because you can give them a bonus.
So that could
you
actually
give a bonus that covers their entire 2016 salary. But and you can spread that bonus out over the years because they get that one big check.
So if you do re-sign those guys, there's the idea, too, that could help with the cap space for this year.
And I think I think when I ran the numbers on it, it was if you did both, you could free up as much as about $7 million in cap space.
Gotcha.
I'm no cap expert, though, so I could have been doing it wrong.
I mean, if you can't, because I know Jimmy's 10 against the cap this year.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a huge amount. But, yeah, I mean, we had an interesting discussion about Eddie, and I think that there needs to be a wager on this because we both feel pretty passionately about it. And Clinton Bonner of 3 In and 3 Out, the who writes the blog for us, he helped us come to an agreement on what this wager should be. And the thing is you can all get involved too. This is for everybody to get in on.
Right. Yeah. If you go to getintheflock.com, we have Adam and I each picked a team name. Yeah. And I think what we're going to do, because Eddie Lacy is a versatile back, not just he can catch the ball out of the backfield from Aaron Rodgers. He did that very well in Green Bay. So Adam got me to Adam and I agreed on a number that would really, I think, where we could consider that a success. And I think 600 yards or more from scrimmage to me is what you would consider Eddie Lacy coming to this team for the price. Consider that a success because he'd be splitting carries with Thomas Rawls, trying to keep both guys fresh. You have the change of pace guy and CJ Procise, but you have those two hammers in Thomas Rawls and Eddie Lacy that you can pound at teams just throughout the game. And so 600 yards or more from scrimmage throughout the year as the number you and I agreed upon. Yep. And so if you want, if you think if you're on my side and you think Eddie Lacy is going to be better than 600 yards, go to getintheflock.com and join my team name, Cheeseburger in Paradise.
All right. So if you're a rational person and you actually look at facts, logic, and reason and understand that this is an awful signing and want to get on board with my team, go to getintheflock.com because to participate in this, we're going to need you to get in the flock because we're going to actually give out a little bit of a prize for this too, to the winning team. Go on getintheflock.com and sign up for my team, which is the China Food Chubster. So that's what we're going to do. So hashtag China Food Chubster. Get on that. I think we're going to have like a little form or something for people to fill out so we know which team that you're on and where to mail your prize to. And what do we want to do for prizes, Brandon? Because I looked at one possibility. I don't know if you felt like that was cool or not, but
I did like your possibility for a prize. You were looking at like a beer bottle opener. And while
that was also a keychain.
Yeah, it's also a keychain. And so we can't send everybody their favorite beverage to drink, but we can send you a tool to pop the top of your favorite beverage. And so for all the winners, they would be doing that. They would be drinking to their I guess if in your case, Adam, it's not drinking to success. It's drinking because it probably means a failure in terms of salary cap dollars.
Oh, it's going to be for solace. I mean, it's not going to be if I win this bet, I'm not excited to win this bet. Yeah, I mean, it just is what it is. But yeah, we're going to have the Seahawks podcast logo on there. So getintheflock.com, join a team and get your chance to win a Seahawks podcast keychain bottle opener. It should be cool.
Any other trinkets that we can think of between now and then too? And we might throw in something additional.
Yes. This is just our initial thought. So, but yeah, and we'd love to hear what you guys feel about the Eddie Lacy signing. Make sure to write in GoHawks@SeahawkersPodcast.com. Let us know if you agree with Brandon or you agree with me. And look, or maybe you're in between. Maybe you think he'll hit 600 yards on the dot. I don't know.
Well, clearly I have the better team name, Cheeseburger in Paradise, after one of the great Jimmy Buffett songs.
How is that the better name? Eddie Lacy, all he does on his Twitter is talk about getting him some China food.
I do like that. I do like the China food tweets. Those actually make me really happy.
So China Food Chubster, I think, fits better.
You don't have any good Jimmy Buffett songs that you like? That
I'm not a Jimmy Buffett guy.
Okay.
No, we have very different musical tastes.
Margaritaville, Volcano.
It's
Man, those are good Jimmy Buffett songs.
They're okay. I mean, if you're 65 and live in Florida. All the people that like Jimmy Buffett are actually living in Margaritaville, because Jimmy Buffett, I saw this the other day, is actually starting a retirement resort. That's a true fact.
It's not going to be long before Sammy Hagar is starting his, because I don't know. He's in his mid 60s too. Yeah. And he's when I'm in my mid 60s, I want to be a partier like Sammy Hagar, man.
Oh, sure. Why not? Because at the ripe age of 37,
you have to have goals. And, being 30 years off from retirement, my goal is to retire in much the same manner as Sammy Hagar.
Oh, well, that's a great goal. The way I would like to retire, Brandon, is like Marshawn Lynch.
Okay.
Because he's having all the fun in retirement. And that's why he is not coming back to the NFL or the Oakland Raiders. Oh, my gosh, man. This is an annoying week of NFL news.
But the Raiders announcer said they were looking at a running back who didn't play last year and bringing him on to play for the Raiders this coming season. That absolutely must mean Marshawn Lynch, Adam.
So here's a little known fact. I'm looking at Natalie Portman to become my wife. I am looking at her. Now,
You're exploring.
I'm exploring the option. I'm interested in that happening. But it turns out that it has to be a consensual thing that goes both ways. Much like when a team looks at a player and wants them to play for them, he's going to kind of want to if he's a free agent, more or less.
The difference here, though, Adam, is that Marshawn Lynch is aware that the Raiders exist.
Yes.
And in fact, I think he likes them quite a bit.
Natalie Portman knows that restraining order was no joke.
But I could see that the only way this makes sense to me is with Marshawn Lynch knowing that Oakland is potentially on their way. They're exploring the options of Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. It's clear to me that the Raiders that Mark Davis wants to move the Raiders to LA or somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if he's able to go and somehow do enough to keep the Raiders in Oakland or even Northern California, but I think he would prefer Oakland.
Yeah.
And I think he would want to do something to make that happen.
Right. So by him somehow being on the roster would change Mark Davis's mind, because all he's seeing is the money. He's going to follow the money. They're going to Vegas. Marshawn Lynch doesn't want to play in Vegas. He doesn't want to play anymore. Like it's just dumb. And not only that, but on top of all of this, he's still under contract with the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
So if he does unretire, the Seahawks would either have to release him and then the Raiders would sign him, or the Raiders would have to trade something for the rights to Marshawn Lynch. There's that as well. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on there for a guy who's been out of the league for a year.
There's several players on the Oakland offensive line that I'd be interested in trading for.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but you're not going to give that up for, like, it doesn't make any sense. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. And again, it's just a silly season.
I love how some of these stories, whether it's Richard Sherman or Marshawn Lynch, I love how just watching them unfold in the media and watching where the origin is. And watching how it unfolds. And
it's unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable. Let's talk a little bit about Nico Thorpe and Deshaun Shedd being re-signed.
Yeah, we are Nico Thorpe, $1.5 million over, is it per year for 2 years?
Yes, I believe. Or I thought it was $3 million for 1 year. Or was it a 2-year deal?
I think it was a 2-year deal worth $3 million for Nico Thorpe.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I did some wrong addition earlier when I was telling you we were out of cap money.
No, see, there's still $1.5 million left.
Yeah, well, exactly. So half an Eddie Lacy.
Enough for a Breno Giacomini.
Yep.
Yeah. Nico's playing at 1.3 this year.
Okay. So there you go. I don't know I know Deshaun Shedd's deal is a 1-year deal, but for how much? I don't know.
Well, it's going to be less than 1.8, right? Because if you're going to give him 1.8 or more, then why wouldn't you just tender him?
Well, or you were going to tender, or you decided not to tender him to see how it went down on the open market, much like they did with Luke Wilson.
Sure.
Because everybody was saying Luke Wilson was going to get somewhere around $6 million when free agency started, right?
Yeah.
And so the Seahawks decided, well, fine, we'll let Shed go out and test the market too. He goes to Buffalo and maybe gets a contract offer, and it was for, say, $3 million or $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your risk didn't pay off. Your gamble, you lost in the gamble, and you really want the guy back, and so you end up paying more than the 1.8.
Oh, here it is. It just came in. Deshaun Shed, 1 year, $1.5 million.
Okay, you're right, and I was wrong. So take that whole theory and throw it out. Wow, really? 1.5 million?
Yeah.
Great. That's great. I'm really excited about that.
That's a heck of a deal.
That's a heck of a deal for a guy who can really play. And, look, Nico Thorpe, I'm not huge on Nico Thorpe, but he's all right, and he's a good depth guy. I'm fine with having him on there. Draft me another corner and another safety or two, and I'm feeling real good about in a linebacker.
Yeah.
And now I'm feeling pretty good.
They've brought in a few guys. They're exploring some veteran options at linebacker, probably around. It's going to be under $1 million for the types of guys that,
like Will Hoyt or
right from the 49ers and the other dude from the Ravens. I mean, guys that I've never heard of. So I'm sure most other fans probably aren't aware of.
They're depth guys.
I mean, Will Hoyt, I didn't even know he played for the 49ers. I thought there was a linebacker too from the Ravens. Arthur Brown, is that who the...
Maybe, I don't know. There was... Yeah. Shao Kapadia had a list of about like 5 dudes the Seahawks were still looking at. And guess what wasn't on the list?
Offensive lineman.
My good Lord. I want this team to be good, man. And I'm so frustrated with the last 2 off seasons, Brandon.
Yeah.
I really feel like we're screwing this up. You have this window with this iteration of players, and it's last year, this year, maybe 2 more if you're lucky with this core for the most part. And then it's time to retool and rebuild. So either you start drafting guys now that are going to take the place of your star players, which we haven't really done, or you bring in some older veterans on a 1 to 2 year deal that can still play, and you have them play to bolster your young core that you have, which we don't do. And, Hawk Blogger wrote a great article. You guys should go, all should go and read. And the title was "The Jokel's on Us." And he brings up how this problem began last year when the Seahawks whiffed on Mitchell Schwartz, Jeff Allen, Alex Boone, Josh Sitton, Donald Penn. All these guys getting about half as much.
Yeah. The Donald Penn one, to me, I think is the biggest one, and going to the Raiders.
He got $5.95 million, and 5.5 of it was guaranteed, and to play left tackle, and he was a near Pro Bowler.
Yeah,
he was available.
If you do Donald Penn instead of Jamarcus Webb, and this is all in hindsight, this is a lot easier to do in hindsight, but if you bring in Donald Penn instead of Jamarcus Webb, we have a lot better year, lot better season than we did last year.
Jamarcus Webb, who you paid $2.5 million to.
And didn't even finish the year.
I know. Hey, look, and this isn't even hindsight. I mean, being asked at that time, I would have told you I would have rather had Donald freaking Penn.
Oh, absolutely. At a position of need versus a guy that couldn't play tackle that moved into guard. Oh, that sounds a lot like Luke Joeckel.
I'm telling you, I'm not excited about the Luke Joeckel thing. I'm just hopeful. Man. I like I mentioned in the interview, man, with Wayne, I've sat down and watched 2014 Jags offensive games, like every play, like 2-3 games just to see. He's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, if he can even come back from the catastrophic knee injury.
Right. A lot of 1 year deals that we're seeing, whether it's Luke Wilson, whether it's Deshaun Shed and with Luke Joeckel. I do too. When I see him, I see the team saying, we don't necessarily love what we see from you in one particular reason or another. They don't love the particular player enough to give them that long-term deal, or whether it's their skills, injury issues. At least with Shed and Wilson, they don't have to coach them to fit in the system. They've been there in the system.
We don't need Luke Wilson.
But with the other guys like Lacy and Joeckel, you're willing to break off from that player if they don't work out within the 1 year, and say they have a great year. Say Joeckel has an absolutely outstanding year, shows he can play offensive line. Then you're looking at a potential compensatory pick, and if he goes and signs with another team next offseason.
So this is the other thing about the Eddie Lacy signing that, again, just baffles me. So you bring in the guy for 1 year. In best case scenarios, that he does awesome, right?
Right.
And now you've become dependent on him in your offense, and he's going to become a free agent. Now you're paying him a contract that's even bigger than what you would pay him now, because every year this goes up. The idea that Donald Penn signed for $5.95 million last year, and Russell Okung just signed for $12 million a year, and Donald Penn's a better player because the market went up, because the cap went up. That's the same conundrum you're going to be in next year with Eddie Lacy.
So you see the running back market going up? Because to me,
all the market goes up. The entire market goes up.
You see all these guys. There were so many guys out there and available. And Eddie Lacy is not going to be a 1,200, 1,300 yard back if Thomas Rawls has the season that we expect him to have. That's why I think that sharing carries makes sense for these guys.
So then you still waste the money, because the guy that you really want, who do you want to have the ball more? Eddie Lacy or Thomas Rawls?
I want them to both be as good so they can share carries.
There's one ball.
I want them to share carries.
I do not want them to share carries.
Why not?
Because I want the carries that Thomas Rawls isn't getting to go to CJ Prosise.
I want all three of those guys to be healthy all season. I don't want to be playing 18 running backs like the Seahawks did last year.
Well, such is the nature of the position. And you've got 4 dudes before you sign Eddie Lacy that can play.
Alex Collins needs to watch out, because Eddie Lacy's got his job. And when I watched a lot of these, I was so excited about Alex Collins after seeing his video last year.
I thought he had potential.
YouTube highlights made me, they were exciting.
Yeah, he had potential.
I know. And that's what I see out of a lot of these guys. And unless you're going for a guy in the first round, I don't see a guy that's just knocking your socks off. And their needs at other positions now in the first round are a lot higher than at running back. You're not going to get your guy out of Florida State now. Thomas Rawls wasn't knocking
socks off, because if he were, he wouldn't have been an undrafted free agent. Like, the idea that you have to draft one of the backs in the first round to get a good one is a joke. You can get him up and down the draft, or even out of the draft.
Well, they have all the picks for that then.
That's just it. They have the picks to actually take a flyer on these guys.
Well, maybe they want to take flyers. Maybe they want to take flyers on offensive linemen in the third round, Adam.
Well, God, I hope so. But unfortunately, it's a draft that's not full of great offensive linemen. So why have it? Why spend your draft capital and take flyers on a position group of weakness in a draft when you could take those flyers and take those risks on a position group that is strong in the draft, like tight end or safety or corner or, running back. It's just, it blows me away, man.
Well, with March Madness starting, it sounds like David in Flemington, New Jersey, is kind of in your same boat. Says, "Hey guys, love the show. I just wanted to check something. I'm not the only one watching NCAA tournament games wondering who will be the Hawks right tackle next season, right? It's not just me, right?"
No, it clearly is not just you. See, maybe that's what I'm missing in this whole equation, Brandon, is the idea that, sure, the draft might be light on offensive linemen, but boy, it might be heavy on tight ends and college basketball players and defensive linemen that, could potentially play offensive line in 5 to 6 years. It might be heavy on that, and I'm just totally missing that perspective.
Well, you have to look toward the 6th and 7th round of the draft then. Maybe you're focusing on the earlier rounds where you should be focusing later in the draft.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Even though most of our picks are at the early part of the draft, but whatever.
It was funny when David sent this in, though, because I was checking out Pristine Auction. And
yes.
And you can go to Seahawkerspodcast.com/auction. It'll take you right to all the Seahawks related gear. But I was looking through. There's a Gary Gilliam signed Seahawks jersey. And it's the on-field replica style jersey. And only $20.
There you go. That's a steal. You'd actually have a Seahawks jersey on the wall right there. I mean, I would love. Maybe there's do you think Pristine Auction has a Gary Gilliam college tight end jersey? Just because that's when he was good. Apparently, good enough to at least get drafted. That'd be great. I might want one of those more than Gary Gilliam starting right tackle for the Seattle Seahawks signed jersey.
Yeah, I haven't seen any Gilliam college jerseys. There's a Trevon Boykin signed Horned Frogs jersey. There's a Steve Largent signed Seahawks full-size helmet, $63. That would be one to watch. A Brian Bosworth throwback full-size helmet, $20. I don't think anybody's bid on that one yet. I think I might bid on that one right now.
Yeah, do that. How is the bidding process on Pristine Auction? Is that a pretty easy situation?
Well, let's walk through it right now. I already signed up for my account. I clicked bid. I have to log in again, and I am going to enter my max bid. Okay, there's one bid on it for $20 right now.
Yes.
I am going to go, let's see, Brian Bosworth, number 55. I will bid $55 on this. I probably shouldn't be giving that away because now people know that they just have to go to 56 to beat me.
Maybe nobody values the helmet at more than $55, though.
Well, not right now.
You can be a lot like John Schneider and be like overvaluing your own offensive lineman in a way that nobody else values them.
Now I'm the high bidder. 5 days left on this helmet, $43.05. And
wow.
So right now I'm the clubhouse leader.
Okay. That'd be a cool prize. That'll be a cool prize for the Pick'em League.
Who says it's going to be a prize? I'm going to put this up in the podcast studio.
Oh, okay. That's cool too. Yeah. That's great.
The prize is going to be the Pete Carroll signed helmet, which I got in the mail this last week.
Did you really?
I did.
That quickly?
It's the Pete Carroll autographed mini helmet. And got a heck of a deal on that one. And
cool.
It looks good. Has the certificate of authenticity right with it. So, when we get up to 300 members of the flock at getintheflock.com, we're going to give it away to one of them.
With that, what do you say we get to the second half of the show? Because there's a lot more to discuss. There's some emails, I know.
There is.
All right. And we had a couple people get in the flock as well. So let's get to that.
Okay. Seahawkerspodcast.com/auction. Check out all of what Pristine Auction has in terms of Seahawks gear. And we are back. Pretty excited. I got to vote for the Seahawkers right now. There's an email going around. I don't know if you've gotten this yet. You should have gotten it, Adam. You're on the Montana Seahawkers mailing list. The email for our club voting for the Rookie of the Year for the Seahawks. The people that the Seahawkers feel is the Rookie of the Year for Seattle. And I had a hard time with this one.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't given it much thought. Rookie of the Year, huh?
Because if you're going to go offensive line, you got George Fant and Gary Gilliam on the offensive line. If you go defensive line, you got Jaron Reed. Those are your rookies that really stand out to me. Because with CJ Prosise getting hurt,
yeah, Jaron Reed then.
Yeah,
okay,
that's your guy.
Sure. I mean, it just as rookies, there's just not a lot of dudes that had big impacts. So.
Well, that's where I was stuck at. It took me a while to really decide this, but yeah, if you want to weigh in, check your email. If you're not a member of the Seahawkers, go to Seahawkers.org and check it out there. I know the annual banquet's coming up on Armed Forces Day, May 20th, and that's going to be in Bellevue again. So check that out as well. And we need to have Bernie Hawk back on here in the coming weeks. It's been a while.
It has been. It absolutely has been.
So we need to get our Seahawkers Central Council president on and see what we got coming up for the annual banquet this year. Let's talk about members of the flock.
All right, man. So after being skunked last week, some people came through.
Kathy Kunkler, back in the flock. She was monthly on PayPal and switched over to getintheflock.com. So Kathy, appreciate you switching back over. PayPal.
Oh, right.
We're having issues with PayPal.
That doesn't surprise me.
I got it worked out. And welcome to the flock to a fellow Montanan, Peter Brooks. Welcome to the flock.
Right on. Where's Peter from?
Missoula.
No way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if I knew what Peter would look like, I'd wave or say hi. Yeah. If I saw him out and about.
Well, he sent in a note, says, being that I just joined the flock today, I thought I'd share my Seahawks provenance. I was a 6-year-old kid, and my family had just moved to Seattle from Hawaii. I had no logical NFL team to be a fan of, and I clearly remember my mom telling me that Seattle was getting its very own team. Needless to say, I was on the hook. I remember there was an info book that listed the team with stats and little bios of all the players. I think my brother and I wore that thing out, memorizing all the players. We found out that Dave Brown, number 22, lived up the street from us. Awesome.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The first season was also the first year of the Kingdome. We all thought it was pretty cool back then. My dad got tickets to go to a game that first season. Luckily, for once, I was the chosen kid who got to go with him. Turns out that game, a preseason game against the 49ers, was the first Seahawks game ever. They lost, but I was a lifetime fan. Thanks for the show.
Oh, you bet, man. And thanks for joining. And that's a cool story. That's a Seahawks fan from the very beginning. The very beginning.
I think there's quite a few of us who are longtime Seahawks fans who probably more than likely experienced a loss in our first time watching the team live.
Yeah, the odds are in favor of that.
Yeah,
yes.
mine was a loss to New Orleans. And that was my first. I think Kelly Stauffer was quarterback and threw a touchdown to Brian Blades in that game. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah,
man, some names in the Wayback Machine right there. I know.
Good old 80s and 80s quarterbacks for the Seahawks.
That's hilarious.
Thanks to Peter and Kathy for going to getintheflock.com. And we're on our way. We've got to get to that 300 number so we can give away this autographed Pete Carroll mini helmet.
Yeah, you bet. Buy swag for the Eddie Lacy bet.
So getintheflock.com. Got to get to that number 300 by the start of the season. All right. What do you say we get to some do better and better at life?
Sounds good, man. Why don't I'll kick us off with a do better.
Okay.
So my do better this week is for the NFL, and more specifically, executives and owners of the NFL. Because I saw an article today written by Mike Freeman, and the title of it was Colin Kaepernick sentenced to NFL limbo for the crime of speaking his mind. And basically, he goes through the idea of why it is that Colin Kaepernick has not signed with a team yet. And if you kind of read through the article, he talks to one AFC executive, and basically kind of three reasons that this executive brings up. One that Colin Kaepernick has not been signed is one, that in his estimation, about 20% of the teams in the league think he genuinely can't play, that he's washed up and he's done.
Okay.
And so that's one reason.
You don't want to bring on a guy that can't play.
Right. And so the second reason, which he believes is about a third of the league or so, is teams are afraid of the backlash if they were to sign Colin Kaepernick. Like maybe Donald Trump would tweet about it or, whatever. Like it would become a thing. And
maybe Donald Trump would tweet about it.
Like, it's just speculation, right? And so they're afraid of the backlash of that, which is, wow, okay, cowards. Like we're cool with Greg Hardy. We're cool with in the backlash that comes with that. We're cool with Mike Vick and the backlash that comes with that. But heaven forbid a dude takes a knee. Let's be afraid of that backlash, you spineless cowards. So there's that. And then there's, in his estimation, another third of the league, and reason number 3, that NFL executives genuinely hate him.
Wow.
Because he decided to take a stand for what he believes in. And I guess part of it is that if you take a stand for what you believe in, there's going to be some consequences and repercussions. I get that. But all the man did was exercise his First Amendment rights. Heaven forbid. I'm sorry it was offensive to you in this outrage culture where somebody says something you slightly disagree with and, it's the worst thing ever. I hate this person and they should be sent to Gitmo and tortured by trolls, for the rest of the time. So the NFL and everybody, because the thing about it is Colin Kaepernick can still play. You're telling me he's not a backup level quarterback in the league these days? I think he is.
Oh, yeah. I think he can.
I think he still has that talent.
Yeah. I said earlier, I think he could back up Eli Manning.
Yeah, he could be the starter for the New York Jets. I mean, like, I really, it baffles me that NFL teams have really blackballed this guy, is basically what it's boiled down to. And for being spineless cowards or closed-minded and ignorant, NFL executives and GMs, do better.
Well, I understand that there's consequences to actions. And so if you're going to turn off NFL teams by making a stand for something that maybe they don't agree with themselves, then I guess that's part of the reaction that you have to own.
2/3 of the league to turn their back on you?
Yeah, that's pretty high. There's still 1/3 left.
Well, but that other 20% don't think he can play.
Well, he had to know when he made that decision that there were going to be reactions from people.
And reactions are fine. And I get that. But this is kind of an extreme reaction for it to go this far.
The other thing is we've seen a lot of owners that just don't like distractions in general.
Sure.
And I they may not even want to sign Richard Sherman, thinking that he would be too much of a distraction.
Right. But like I said, Greg Hardy was able to get a job.
We saw Ricky Jean-Francois released from the Redskins and is now coming to Seattle for a visit because he appeared to be a distraction for the Redskins.
Sure. It's for the weak GM, the weak head coach, and the weak organization that can't handle personality in their players. Just look at the way the Seahawks handle Richard Sherman. Yeah, that's a big personality, and they managed to make that work.
Well, they made Marshawn Lynch work. There's another big personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look at the Patriots. They handle big personalities, and if the guy is unhandleable, then he's gone. But nobody else can seem to handle LeGarrette Blount. Yeah, he's great when he's on the Patriots. Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me that an organization like the Redskins got rid of Ricky Jean-Francois. That's what my do better was going to be this week. Now I remember. I had to come up with one on the fly.
Oh, well.
It's going to be for the Redskins.
Yeah.
So there's an honorary do better right there. Man, they burned the witch that was Scott McCloughan for, making him better. So good job, guys.
Well, and that's essentially what Francois was saying, right? That he could not believe losing Deshaun Jackson, losing Pierre Garçon, and not signing their quarterback to a long-term deal. Mm-hmm. Man, it's a rough go for Washington fans this offseason.
It is. Allen and Snyder. That's a bad pairing, man. That's a bad pairing.
My do better this week is for Bleacher Report, and we've mentioned it a few times in this episode. This potential Richard Sherman trade that was in the news Thursday evening, all starting from a podcast where former executive Michael Lombardi was on a Ringer podcast and was speculating about the idea of improving the secondary for the New Orleans Saints. Mm-hmm. And throw out there, much like the same quote that that we talked about with Jimmy Graham, that he said, based on what he had been hearing around the NFL, that for the right price, the Seahawks would be willing to deal Richard Sherman. That's what his belief, based on what he was hearing. Right. Not that he heard from somebody or has it on a good source. If Michael Lombardi had a good source on a potential Richard Sherman trade, He's been a writer. He knows how to write his own articles. Mm-hmm. But no, instead, Michael Lombardi makes this offhanded comment while they're talking about improving the Saints. Some guy from the New England Patriots blog hears this while listening to the podcast and tweets it out per Michael Lombardi that the Seahawks are willing to trade Richard Sherman. This is where it kicks off, because then a dude from Bleacher Report sees this tweet from a guy that runs this New England Patriots draft blog and writes an entire article about how the Seahawks are willing to trade Richard Sherman. The only thing next is seeing, and then from there, you see the real clickbaity sites go, deal with Richard Sherman, imminent almost. And it's just watching these reports roll downhill based off of a comment from a dude on a podcast. It's incredible to me.
It's unbelievable
how the news worked. There was no editor at Bleacher Report. Well, maybe Jason Cole saw it and said, oh, this looks good. Let's run with this. Because that somebody at Bleacher Report had to sign off on it and say that it's okay. They didn't look back at the fact that the entire story was generated on a tweet from a dude listening to a podcast.
Oh, it's crazy, man. I mean, this is the day and age we live in. And I think, to Mike Lombardi's credit, he understands the game. He gets it. He understands the media game. And this was the first episode of his new podcast, right?
Right.
Yeah. How do you get a lot of attention to the new podcast? Throw out some unsubstantiated rumor about a star player.
And word it in just the right way that you cannot be wrong.
Right. And the other part of it, too, is, I mean, any player is available. Richard Sherman is absolutely available. You betcha he is. If Dallas wants to trade their entire offensive line for Richard Sherman, I'm in.
Deal.
I'm in. Deal. I mean, yeah, everything's got a price. Friggin' duh. Maybe the only person that doesn't have a price is Tom Brady.
Right.
Or any of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. If you have a top 5 franchise quarterback, probably untouchable.
Probably.
But every other player in the NFL, yeah, they're open to be. Every team's open to trade him for the right price.
Mm-hmm.
And look, this is the same guy who was a GM for the Browns. Okay, just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. For 2 years, he was GM of the Browns,
right.
And they stunk. So,
he's had several jobs, and now he has a podcast.
Now he has a podcast. He's one of Bill Simmons' favorites. He's a guy that comes on and sometimes he talks a lot of sense. I mean, I'm not saying he
was good to listen to. I'm just saying he has a job for what we do for fun.
Right. Exactly. And I get it. He's playing the game and all that, man. But just the way that the whole thing spiraled out of control. When I went to bed last night, I saw one little thing like Mike Lombardi says, whatever about Richard Sherman, that he's open to be traded or whatever. And I woke up this morning and clicked on my team stream from Bleacher Report, and that's all it was. It was just Seahawks are going to trade Richard Sherman. Stop it, man. Do better.
Yeah, Bleacher Report, man. You know what? I'm not just putting this on Bleacher Report. I'm putting this on Jason Cole. He's involved in this somehow. Jason Cole, it's all your fault. Do better.
I like it. You're probably right.
His name wasn't attached to the article, but I know.
Still his fault, though.
It's his fault.
Yeah. It's the
culture that he's created at Bleacher Report.
Hey, look, you are a podcaster, and so therefore you have both the ability and right to make an unsubstantiated claim like this is Jason Cole's fault.
Right.
With no evidence. You have that right.
I expect somebody,
been set.
I don't care what outlet online it is, 247 Seattle Sports, write up the article. Jason Cole's fault that this Richard Sherman thing got to be a big deal.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
I believe, based on everything that I've seen from Bleacher Report in the past, that this is Jason Cole's fault.
I think you're spot on. All right, man. What do you say we do a little better at life?
Let's do some better at life. Who you got?
Mine's quick this week. My better at life than Skip Bayless this week is for none other than your Seattle Seahawk, Frank Clark. And for those of you that didn't see, apparently he ate some Korean barbecue yesterday and was out in the sunshine a little too long and ended up needing his appendix to be removed. He got appendicitis.
Wow.
And number one, thanks for doing that in the offseason. Appreciate that.
That shows willpower on Frank Clark's part, and he needs to be recognized for his effort.
Yes, and so I appreciate that. Secondly, I like now having a guy on the Seahawks that I can relate to, knowing that he plays without an appendix, much like I did in the 6th grade. I played without an appendix after having an emergency appendectomy in the summer going into 6th grade. So we're similar that way, and I like the way that he did it. Now, the other thing is that he needs to work on a story, though, as to how he got appendicitis, because for me, I don't know if you remember this ride, Brandon, but I went to the fair and I got on the Roundup, and I felt good when I got on the Roundup. And the Roundup was one that you stand up and you put your back against the wall on the outside of a circle, basically, and you got little straps to go over your shoulders, and it spins super fast, you know, like you're on the outside of a merry-go-round, right? So the centrifugal force pushes you to the outside, and then it would tilt up so that, you're at a 45-degree angle or so as it spun you around. And then I got off the Roundup and immediately didn't feel good, which is weird for me. I'm usually good with rides. And by the next morning, I was having surgery to have my appendix removed. The Roundup gave me appendicitis, much like Korean barbecue gave Frank Clark appendicitis. But again, he needs a more interesting story for it. But other than that, thanks for being my appendix buddy. Thanks for doing this in the off season. And for that, Frank Clark is better at life than Skip Bayless.
Yeah, you show off those scars and you say gunshot wound.
Well, so now apparently, my scar's fairly large, but apparently these days, like there's just 3 little holes. They do it like arthroscopically or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't, yeah. So what I don't understand is he had on this giant wrap around his entire torso for this. That was a little confusing to me, but whatever. I don't know.
You think you could just throw a couple Band-Aids on the incision points?
Yeah. Yeah. But he was selling it that way. Maybe that's how he was trying to help his story. Maybe that's how he was doing that. Yeah.
I like it. My Better at Life this week, I have a co-Better at Life for Bobby Wagner and Jacob Green. This is overdue because this goes back to the 82nd annual MTR Western Sports Star of the Year Awards. And Bobby Wagner gets the Male Sports Star of the Year Award for his outstanding achievement this last season. And he was...
Finally, somebody recognized it.
I know. He had a heck of a year. He was up against the Washington quarterback, Jake Browning, Nelson Cruz, Gabe Marks from Washington State, and the Seattle Sounders FC forward Jordan Morris. But yes, Bobby Wagner comes away with the award and also getting an award. Jacob Green got the Paul G. Allen Award, which is given to the person who has made a significant or compelling philanthropic contribution. We talked about Paul Allen's philanthropy on the last show. Jacob Green raised more than $2.6 million for the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, and also more than $420,000 for Komen for the Cure. Wow. And yeah, so for his efforts, Jacob Green got that award, and that's why I'm putting both of them on my list this week. Better at Life than Skip Bayless. Solid
Choices there, Brandon, and for very solid reasons, in showing how players that even while they're playing obviously have an impact in their community, but even after retirement with Jacob Green, I mean, you can see what the power of their celebrity is after that and what they're able to do and accomplish. And pretty cool, man. Pretty cool.
Well, it was a fun show this week. You know, we got into it a little bit. Clearly, you and I in disagreement as far as Eddie Lacy, but we're going to see how many members of the flock, which ones agree with you, which ones agree with me. Team Cheeseburger in Paradise. That's who you want to be on.
Whatever. China food chubster, man. That's what we're doing.
GetInTheFlock.com. Join us there. Can't wait to see the results.
GetInTheFlock.com, much like Eddie Lacy's about to get him some China food.
I celebrated the signing day with a cheeseburger from Frugal's.
Oh, well, there you go. That is a good day. I've never been to a Frugal's.
Oh, they're good.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Yeah,
it's like Chrome building in Kalispell, right?
Oh, yeah. If you hear people talk about where great burgers are, you hear about In-N-Out Burger, you hear about, well, I don't know if Dick's is like a great burger, but you hear about Dick's.
None of those other ones are great burgers either.
Oh, Frugal's is a great burger.
Well, good to know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that burger review,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.